Actually cleared the room. I think we're down to 5 people in the room, so we're good to go at a normal board meeting at this point. I could just come sit next to you, John. We could have a private conversation. I'll move it away a little bit. Let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Jenna, and you guys want to lead us, please? To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first up on the agenda, the committee reports. We'll start off with the report of the student representatives.
So first, on February 20th is the Kappa Social Studies Honor Society induction, and that'll be in the library at 6 p.m. And that's basically just recognizing students who excel in social studies and are committed to helping the community.
The following week, on February 26th, there'll be a course expo for incoming freshmen and their parents.
Tickets are now on sale for Les Mis. As you can kind of see from the stage, we're really getting there. So if you go on the Berlin High School website, you can buy tickets there.
And last week, the Commissioner of Education, Dr. Miguel Cordona, visited Berlin High School, and he attended classes and visited Berlin grounds. And we have a couple of sports highlights for you guys, too. So for the girls' basketball, the greatest of all time, Lizzie Litwinko, recently surpassed the all-time leading scorer. And the girls' indoor track team are officially the CCC South champions, and the boys' basketball team recently just beat Bristol Eastern.
Did you say that was the girls' track? What did you say? The girls' track team is the
Yes,
CCC?
indoor track.
Congratulations, that's great.
Recently, the Junior Achievement Club, 3 students placed first in the Entrepreneurial Challenge. Connor Gilo, Peter Cohen, and Josh Bois all were a part of that.
And this week, on February 12th, the ADL Truth About Hate program will be held for freshmen and sophomores, and there'll be upperclassmen running as student facilitators with several teachers. And that's all from us tonight.
Thank you very much. Next up are the committee reports. Why don't we start with the community outreach, not community outreach.
Community engagement.
Community engagement, I apologize.
Yep. So the committee met on January 30th, and it was our first meeting as a committee since this most recent election, and Mary Ellen joining the board. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it that day, but we just talked about communication during the budget season and the ways we're going to communicate with the public, such as revisiting social media, doing meet and greets at local businesses, and I'll let Tracy elaborate on that shortly, as well as the website, the citizen columns, PTO, other venues to really share our information. And we talked about other topics that can be discussed in the Berlin Citizen column. Also, we scheduled our next meeting for this Wednesday at 3 p.m. So we're going to meet again. I think just during budget season, it's important that we come together frequently to really just kind of make sure we're on solid footing. So I'm going to turn it over to Tracy because she's been doing a lot of the work behind the local businesses.
So we had an idea to do meet and greets with the Board of Ed, with citizens that want to come out and ask us questions or talk to us personally, informal. One of the businesses reached out to us, which was Arby's, and offered to supply coffee, cookies for maybe a couple hours. So we thought about continuing with that and trying to see if that's another avenue just to get the word out and for people to approach us. Since then, a couple other businesses have also reached out, liking the idea. So this is something we're going to entertain this week, maybe set a date for one of them, and then perhaps do it once a month, once every other month, and just see how it goes and if anybody wants to talk to us.
So I know you're planning on meeting again on Wednesday, I think you said, right?
Yep.
That's the next meeting. Have you had any conversations about, is this a weekend thing? Is this a weeknight thing? Have we gone that deep yet?
We haven't gone that deep yet.
Okay.
Does the board have anything they'd like to share?
Does anybody have preferences? For me personally, probably probably a weekend thing, as inconvenient as a weekend thing might feel, I would rather do it on the weekend because I have time that I could devote to it. Weeknights are very difficult, but if the rest of the board decides to go weeknight, I'd do what I could to make myself available as well. Does anybody else have a preference or a thought before they have their next meeting?
I think the weekend, we would attract more people.
I agree about the weekend. I think even like a Sunday afternoon, that's
Could be.
when a lot of people are just kind of out and about and getting stuff done and, might have some more time to stop by and.
My thought is you might reach different people if you hold them at different times. So have one at one time, another at
It's a good point.
distinctly different time.
So we're talking about picking like an hour or 2 hour block, and then whoever is
Right.
able to come, we have to set something up inside. You guys could kind of coordinate that in terms of how we do this.
Right, and I know that, for instance, Arby's said that they would help advertise that as well. It's just kind of a way that we can give back to the community, do something local. Hopefully they, the people that come see us purchase something from them, or,
I want to see the Board of Ed name on that little sign as I drive by.
and they'll do it.
Yeah.
They did for McGee.
I saw that. That sounds very good. I think then maybe bring back, unless anybody else has any thoughts, come back with some weekend dates and pick a date or two, and then we'll have some kind of a sign up where we can say who's available. Perfect, thank you. It's a really good idea. I'm looking forward to it. Committee reports, F&O, Finance?
So the F&O committee met on February 3rd at 7:30 in the morning. Yes, that is the day after the Super Bowl. But we did meet, and we were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to go. We had 2 items on the agenda. The first was the reviewing of the $500,000 that the BOE directed the superintendent to reduce the budget. I sent out a basic summary to the entire board last Thursday, and after review with the superintendent, we were in agreement with the strategy behind where he took the reductions from and why it was done that way. We have a further discussion on this later on in the agenda, so rather than do it now, I'll save most of it for then. The second part of the meeting was about the high school closeout. Adam Salina attended a meeting with town representatives and got a basic overview of where that stands. And a lot of our conversation revolved around still the basic, for lack of a better term, discrepancy of where the ductwork actually stands at Berlin High School and whether or not we should agree to close out. The information that was provided to us is something that most of the board members would have seen from something that came to us in 2018, I believe it is, that says, yep, it's all good and it's painted and it's going to be fine. But since then, we have proof that the ductwork paint, it was not sealed with a primer prior to a finish coat. It's peeling off in areas, and that continues to go along. So our discussion revolved around our concern that it has not been addressed appropriately. Should it leak with the insulation that's on the inside of that ductwork, that could create a mold issue, which in turn could create a air quality issue. And you'll hear, again, we have a discussion on the agenda later on, but we were going to come back to you with a recommendation to perhaps commission a study from an outside source, someone who's not affiliated with any of the construction process objective, to give us the information that we truly need, because we're clearly on 2 different playing fields relative to what the town wants to do and where we want to be as far as acceptance. So we'll talk more about that,
Okay.
but that's where really what we revolved around.
Thank you very much. Correct report, Tracy.
I don't have anything yet. This Thursday is our meeting right after the legislation breakfast, so I'll have a lot to report after both of those.
Excellent, thank you. Correspondence to the board?
No correspondence this evening.
No? Tim, I think you had mentioned that you had something you wanted to bring up at this point.
Yes, I wanted to share with the board and the public. I had an opportunity yesterday. I was invited up to WPI, Worcester Polytech in Worcester, Massachusetts, to be a speaker at the Southern New England Advocacy Conference. They have, for the past 3 years, been putting on a conference with a focus on the FIRST robotics teams to discuss about advocacy and learn about how to advocate for themselves. to the point where tomorrow students in Massachusetts are going to Boston to meet with their state representatives and state senators. Students in Connecticut are encouraged to go tomorrow to meet with state representatives and state senators. Our team here from Berlin is actually meeting with Representative Kathy Abercrombie tomorrow morning to talk to her about funding from a state level for STEM-related education, which robotics falls into that vein. And I had the honor to be a speaker to talk about state education funding and the structure of how that was done. I got to share the ECS grant calculation formulas with a bunch of high school students, and they were just thrilled with that.
Exciting.
We talked about mill rates and taxes and all other kinds of things, but it was a very interesting look at advocacy in general, and a nice opportunity for these kids who are all, you know, like-minded, driven kids to learn about this kind of stuff. So it was a very good experience. Unfortunately, there were only 5 kids from Connecticut who went. We had 3 kids from the Berlin team, and there were 2 kids from the team at Xavier in Middletown who attended this event. But it is only their 3rd year, and it is a Massachusetts event, so they've been pushing it a little bit harder in Massachusetts. They had more people from there. Coincidentally, the gentleman who organizes it, his name is Nick Galati. He is a 2001 Berlin High School graduate, was a member of the first robotics team in Berlin, went on to WPI, got a degree there, founded a robotics team at a high school in Worcester, and then moved into this program. So it was a nice little connection back to Berlin schools up in Worcester.
Are you able to attend the conversation with Representative Abercrombie tomorrow?
I hope to be able to, yes.
So it'll be very interesting to report back after the next meeting to see how that went.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
If my client's servers go down, I can forward my cell phone to yours, and I'll be able to meet with her without a problem. So,
I get no service in my office, Tim.
perfect. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Audience of citizens, or citizen as the case may be. Is there anybody that would like to address the Board of Education tonight? Take that as a no. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Any additions or subtractions to the consent agenda? No? Do I have a motion?
I will move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded by Adam. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Did you take note that Jamie's not here, by the way? Okay. New business, facilities, facility-related updates. Mr. Cugno.
I just have a couple of things to report. You may recall that we applied, I guess it's 2.5 years ago now, for a security grant from the state of Connecticut. It was called Round 3 at that point. It comes from the Homeland Security operation. The town of Berlin, basically the Board of Ed, received the grant. Total project amount is $749,000. Of which the state pays a portion of it, we pay a portion of, we get about 43% of that granted to us by the state. There were a number of things which we said we were going to do back in those days on security. Security's changed a lot. Our interest in what we want to invest in has changed a lot, and what we spent money in the Board of Ed's operating budget and what we spent it on over the last year had changed a lot. So what we had to do is go back into the state for a revision to our grant because we wanted to make sure that they were going to allow the things that we now wanted to spend on security. We have changed our program a little bit. Making it very short, I've been working with Kevin Delaney from obviously the finance department and also with Doug Solek from facilities. We put together a new plan. We put that plan up to the state back in August, I believe. We had a few revisions, a few conversations with Homeland Security, and we just, as of January 28th, got our approval for our revised plan. That means a couple things. Hundreds of thousands of dollars we've already spent is going to be reimbursed, which we're really happy about. And also we got what we wanted to do with the rest of the money, which were things like we'd already done cameras, doors, locks, access controls, card readers, multimedia infrastructure, radio system, phone systems, police responders, window film, bollards, which we've already done, and a few other things. So I'm happy to say that the state said, yes, go forward with your revisions. We've spent a lot of it already. We're going immediately now to get the reimbursement on that portion. Kevin is the one that goes for that reimbursement. And we're also going to spend the rest of it by June 30th in order to get the full recovery of the grant. So it's good stuff. Second thing I have to report is you may recall a conversation that we had as of late with some of the condition of things like lavatories at our elementary schools and so on and so forth. I've been talking to Doug Solik about that from a facility standpoint and what we can do, and also working with the superintendent relative to some ideas. I found out that, and some of you may have known this, but we had a facility report done on the condition of all our schools except Berlin High School back in 2013. It was done by Fryer Associates. It's very detailed. It's the kind of report that says what you should do in every room, every classroom, every lavatory, every roof, every HVAC system, and so on and so forth. It's scary to read because you can now understand with these old buildings, it names whether things are in good condition, fair condition, bad condition, et cetera. One of the things it takes on is the lavatories, and so we're lucky enough to now have, which I didn't know before, a full report on, at least back 7 years ago, what this consultant believes should be done in the lavatories for the elementary schools and in McGee, specifically for this conversation, Griswold, which we are having some issues with. So what we've done is spoken to Fryer. I'm going to have them update that report to now. I'm going to get some updated cost estimates, and we're going to see if we can put some plans together to put a program together very shortly to see if we can improve Griswold's lavatories. In the meantime, we're doing some inspection over there in the next week and hopefully get some more increased maintenance in that facility. So I'm pleased in a couple ways. First of all, we have something to move forward with, which is an actual document from professionals that we can work with. And second of all, that this is the kind of thing that I think from the board and from the superintendent's standpoint that we can get that in much better shape much quicker than we thought.
Do you think that this is just a maintenance issue, or are we talking about rebuilding or restructuring?
Well, I think it's both. I think there is some, and I'm not talking about just sweeping the floor. I'm talking about that there's some regular maintenance that is much more than normal that should be done in those lavatories, and my guess is in the lavatories in the other schools. But some of the equipment and facilities in those lavatories is so old that it needs to be replaced. So I'm hoping that we can do both plans. The second plan will take a little longer and need a little more money, but the maintenance part we're going to start on immediately.
So would the goal be to be able to have some of these numbers by next fall when we start to talk about next year's budget process?
That's the idea.
Okay.
I'm hopefully going to have them a lot earlier than that, but yes, we'll have them for next year for funding.
Right.
We will also have them, if things work correctly, for the end of this year in case we run into some money.
Thank you. Any questions for Jeff at all? Comments? Thank you, Jeff. Next up is the discussion of the closeout of the BHS renovation project. You had mentioned, you had alluded to it a little earlier, Matt. Do you want to speak to it, or do you want Adam to speak to it since he went to the meeting?
I think that we'll end up kind of playing back and
Okay.
forth, but I think if we just, a quick overview. So in order to close out the BHS project, I think it's important for the board to know that there is about 4.3 million in total, 3 million in reimbursement coming back from the state, and 1.3 that is left over from the original project. The town would like to close that out so that they have access to all of that. And as I said earlier, we have some concerns about the ductwork on the ceiling of this building, on the roof of this building. And we had a kind of a backup plan that in the event that we found that the ductwork was 100% acceptable, there may have been an opportunity to talk about how to improve the field in the back, moving it from a grass field to a turf field with that 1.3, not the 3, but the 1.3. I'll let Adam talk about the meeting you went to, and I think I've already summarized the the F&O meeting and kind of where we stand. So Adam?
Okay.
So on January 23rd, there was a meeting that consisted of the town manager, representatives from the Public Building Commission, representatives of the Board of Finance, the mayor was there, Jeff Cugno was there, myself, and obviously the discussion was with regard to the closeout of the high school. I did express that we've heard that there are issues with the ductwork. The Public Building Commission representatives were pretty clear that they believe the ductwork was fine as is, and provided a report, which was something that was emailed a couple of years ago, which, having read through, I don't think it was really a report, it was more of a status update. And I think that we're all on the same page. We want to close out the project as quickly as we can, but understanding that we can't do that unless we're confident that the ductwork is adequate and is going to last. So it boils down to, it was originally designed to be underneath the roof, under the roof, contained within the building, but based on some of the structural, existing structures and beams that were in the school, the ductwork had to go up on the roof, which is not uncommon. It does happen and is and can be utilized that way. But based on what we've heard from our facilities individuals that are here on a regular basis, we had heard about some leaks. Some of the leaks were due to just backed up downspouts, which were rectified. I do know that they had, the PBC had contracted with somebody to do like an infrared screening of the entire roof to check for any weak spots that were corrected, but it still comes down to the ductwork. So I know there is a potential motion that's on the agenda. I would suggest that we hold off at this point. I think that everyone's in agreement that if we can resolve what needs to happen with the ductwork, then we were happy to sign off and close out the project. But prior to doing any action this evening, and I know I spoke with Brian and had some communication with the town manager, Roche, I think that the mindset is to reconvene that same group of individuals so everyone understands what needs to happen from the town, from the PBC, from the Board of Finance, from the Board of Ed. And we can just work cooperatively to decide if who is going to contract the third party to inspect the ductwork, review it, and come up with a recommendation of how to rectify it if it needs to be. So at this point, I think that everyone, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, Roche is looking at, is in contact with the PBC, and I think that we're looking at scheduling a meeting in the short term, probably over the next couple of weeks.
I spoke to Roche, town manager, and Roche's comment was he was going to talk to the mayor about scheduling the meeting. Wasn't sure where the PBC was at this point. The PBC getting involved in it at this point really wants to turn it over to the town.
Mm-hmm. Which is fine. I know that PBC's mindset is that they have completed the project as it was spec'd out, and it does meet the current specs. It was signed off by the architect, it was signed off by the state, and it meets all the current requirements. So if the PBC feels that it's in the town's hands, then perhaps it's going to be the town manager to the council, or it's going to be further action by the Board of Ed. But until we have a full inspection and sign off on the ductwork, I would suggest that we don't close out the project. But conversations are still continuing to move forward.
And I asked Roche if he could move forward to try to get that meeting with anyone who will come to the table and meet, even if it's the town and not the PBC.
And ideally, then, we get it done within the next couple of weeks, the meeting, I mean, and then we move forward from there. So we'll know right away at our next available meeting where we are with the process, and then we just keep track of it, step by step. Is there anything else other than the ductwork that's a major issue left on the table?
No, I know that in speaking with Tom Smith at one of our previous meetings, who was the owner's rep on the project, you know, we did have some fittings that were loose or were not secured properly on some of the piping. But when you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of joints and fittings, I mean, certain things are not going to be done to perfection in the first round. But I think that the majority, if not all, of the smaller punch list items that are, you know, integral to the actual project, I think have all been completed as they should. It's only the ductwork, which is the only outstanding issue of substance.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Go ahead.
A question is, why would we not move forward and authorize the study in an effort to get a nonpartisan, non-biased study done to bring as support for the argument that it is not ready, or the flip side to that is it is ready.
Because I can only speak for myself, because based on that meeting that we had in good faith, they provided information which has then been presented to the Finance Committee, and I think that out of respect, we should go back to that same group and say, we've reviewed what you've provided us and we need more information. So that everyone's on the same page, either we are going to contract somebody, or it's going to be through the council with their directive. But I think just in the spirit of cooperating, that there's nothing wrong with having another conversation with them, because the way it was left was they believe the ductwork is fine, we don't. Who's right? Well, I think that we've gotten more information since then to be able to present back to them, and essentially just figure out how they want to arrive at the conclusion. But I think in fairness, because we started with that larger group with everybody involved, I think we should go back to them before we take any action.
Fair enough.
All right, thank you. Then I eagerly await to see how that meeting goes and where we are with the next step. Any other questions or comments for Adam or Matt on this issue? All right, then we move on to our last agenda item for today. Not quite. Did I miss something?
Should we table this?
We got some procedural
No,
stuff to do,
didn't.
but we'll do it after this.
Okay. The review and possible adoption of the proposed Board of Education budget for 20 and 21. So we've spent 3 days secluded in a room somewhere going through this thing line by line. Brian and his staff answered dozens and dozens of our questions, both through email and in person, in terms of gathering some data that we had wanted. F&O committee, I think, has met 2 or 3 times at least going through all this as a committee. So here we are. We now got a final number. Brian made his presentation today. Does anybody have any questions, any comments on where we are with the budget presentation as is, the budget numbers?
Rich, I don't have any questions. I have a comment based on tonight's presentation. The hockey folks aside, we heard their concern, and I think that your answer was appropriate, that we're going to look at this moving forward and how we address that. I don't think it impacts whether we adopt this budget or not adopt this budget. To me, it doesn't give any reason to delay adoption of this. So I don't see any reason that we couldn't move and take action on adoption of this this evening.
We need a motion before. I should have said this before. We need a motion and a second, and then we can have a discussion on this. And I neglected to do that. I apologize. So do we have a motion for consideration?
Move to adopt the Board of Education operating budget for 2020 through 2021 in the amount of $47,387,504.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, now let's discuss. So you were talking
what
about
I said.
hockey. And we're going to gather information, I think, for the hockey parents. They came
Excuse
here.
me?
They deserve it. Yes.
I spoke to the hockey parents out in the lobby, and I asked them to send us an email of all the information that they have. Things like they pay $120 a week to an individual to transport their children because they all are working parents. And I told them to please put all those details in place. And I did say, should have come back up sooner, to an earlier meeting, and they said that they had asked the athletic director to present their concerns earlier in the year, and I don't know if he did that or not. I would assume he did. So, but they're going to send me the information, and I will forward it to everyone here.
Thank you very much. And I've asked Brian to gather some more information as well, some questions about what was it like, how many people are we talking about, when was this program created, how do the other schools within our co-op, I believe they said, Brian, there's 4 or 5 other schools that we combine with on a team. How do they run their programs just for the sake of equity? So I think we have a lot to look at before we make a decision, but that's all part of it.
And they did tell me that the $2,000 does not include their equipment and uniform.
Okay.
That's just ice time.
So this is good information going forward, and I anticipate that we'll have further, it'll probably be a discussion item once we get more information and we can look at it. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else on the budget? Comments, questions? We've talked about this a lot.
I did look up some historical stuff. I don't know if it's helpful to folks, but last year, we adopted a 5.9% budget, or about $2.6 million. What progressed from there, just so that you know, is that the Board of Finance did put in a reduction to that budget of $1.3 million. And the town council cut $400,000 out of that, and then gave us back essentially $100,000. So, but if you're looking for a parallel to where we were last year, this year's proposed budget adoption from a percentage point of view is less than what it was last year.
That would include the change to the capital program.
Correct.
Which brought things back into our budget. So not only is it less, I'm anticipating where you're going, not only is it less, but it actually reflects more with less.
Correct. So I started looking at that earlier today, and I was like, oh, it's interesting that this is where we are. Last year, we adopted a budget of $2.6 million increase, and this year it's $2.4 million increase. So we're actually looking to adopt both less on a percentage side and less on a dollars side, even with those changes. So just point of history, not that it matters.
It does matter. It's good information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else with comments or questions about the budget? No? All right, hearing nothing else, like a vote. All those in favor of the motion as mentioned, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. Thank you very much. So we'll start with it is now our budget. It's now in our hands. You're smiling, Brian, because it's now out of your hands for the moment. So thank you to your staff. Thank you to all the people that did all the work behind the scenes. This is a mammoth task, putting all this stuff together. The presentation tonight, the presentations to us, answering all the questions. You didn't bow away from a single question that we answered, and I appreciate that. So now the budget belongs to us. 5.36, I believe we said the final numbers were. And we'll pass that on to the Board of Finance, and we'll take our next steps. I believe that is it for the agenda. Tim, I'm sorry, you had.
Yeah, so just a couple of procedural things.
Yes.
So first off, I move to take from the table the item from the January 13th, 2020 meeting regarding the 180th, 181st day.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. So this was an item that was originally tabled.
Correct. And in terms of discussion, the purpose of taking this in this manner is from a parliamentary procedure perspective. The act of tabling a motion is one meeting to the next item.
Gotcha.
If it is not acted on during this meeting, that item will die. So I am taking it from the table and leaving it at that for starters. We have a motion to follow that immediately after the vote taken on this.
All right, so let's take a vote. Any discussion on this? I think we all.
Any questions?
No, anything? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes immediately. Our second motion?
I move to postpone the discussion and action regarding making the 180th day a half day for students and the 181st day a full day for professional development for the teachers.
Second.
So with your motion,
So
there's no timestamp on this.
The action of a postponement creates some indefinite capabilities.
So the
Certainly,
possibility is there, if we want to revisit this, we can revisit it.
we can revisit this. I personally don't want to see it go too far, but I know part of the things we want to weigh is weather and other unknowns. So, hopefully in the next 4 to 8 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, we can figure that out between this meeting and some of the next ones coming
Okay.
up. But that way it's able to exist on hold within our structure.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions on this? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that.
Give those to Julie if she wants.
Thank you for passing that down.
Do we have a final motion?
Move to adjourn.
I'm tired, man.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you very much, everybody.